What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the late night live stream for the very first time of the 2022 NFL season. Joey, week 1 Draftkings, a mere 15 hours away from the week 1 slate kicking off.
We're almost there. It's finally time. It's finally time to put our heads down and grind the DFS season.
I can't wait. I cannot wait. It's a welcome change of pace post best ball. And, here we are. We're going to be talking about position by position, going quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, talking about our favorite cash game plays, our favorite tournament plays. If anybody has any questions at any point throughout the stream, do not hesitate to ask them. We are here to answer. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, please subscribe to the channel. We just crossed 400, hunting 500. Help us get there. We do appreciate it. Joey, what do you say we jump into this slate? A lot of shit to cover.
Yeah, a lot of new changes and updates to the podcast that we released a few days ago. And, just taking a look at the quarterbacks, I think it really has condensed around Jalen Hurts being the chalk quarterback this week at 6,800. I think that Hurts is obviously a phenomenal play. And I think that in cash games, you probably are playing Jalen Hurts. But I will say, I am highly considering playing Trey Lance in cash this week. Even with, hear me out, even with Jalen Hurts in this rising total with the Eagles and Lions game, with their rising implied team total, obviously, I think the majority of projections and fantasy community are expecting the Eagles to pass the ball more, and rightfully so. I think Trey Lance's rushing floor is still high enough to where he's still in cash game consideration, even though projections might not have him as a high-owned quarterback this week.
Yeah, the Eagles have about a 3.5 point higher implied team total compared to the 49ers. I think people have more faith in the Lions being able to answer on the other side of the ball, sort of push the Eagles to, find themselves in that pass-heavy, philosophy that we've been expecting them to maintain. I think that there's a pretty high level of risk for Jalen Hurts in tournaments. I don't think that he has nearly as high of a ceiling as some of the other guys at the top end. I think that, we are all hype about the Lions. Everyone's hype post Hard Knocks, this and that. But this is a team with a really shaky defense, and the Eagles should be able to move the ball at will, especially on the ground. They were one of the most, if not the most run-heavy team in the league last year. I think that they'll be able to impose their will with Kenny Gainwell, Miles Sanders, and co. I think there's a lot of validity to a Jalen Hurts fade in tournaments. I'm right there with you considering Trey Lance and cash, but I haven't made a final decision there.
Yeah, for sure. And big BRs in the chat. Chase Edmonds, Brandon Ayuk, or Devontae Smith, full PPR. Hurts is my quarterback. Thanks. So I'm assuming that this is for your flex if you're talking about Chase Edmonds and 2 wide receivers. I think, in my opinion, I would rank it Devontae Smith just for that correlation and that stack, even in redraft. Then I would go Brandon Ayuk, Chase Edmonds.
I
How do you
would
feel about that?
go Devontae Smith, Chase Edmonds, Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I
But
think
I think we're
Edmonds and Ayuk is close for sure.
yeah. But I do I think that we're on the same page. Devontae Smith for sure in that spot.
Yeah.
Um, Trey Lance, Jalen Hurts. Is there anybody else that you're considering in cash games this week?
Yeah, and cash, I think those are really the clear-cut two options, at least in my opinion. I think Lamar Jackson, you can go there. He is 7,300, as you could see, and not much needs to be said about Lamar Jackson. I'm not going to talk about how good he is, but it's a plus matchup. Obviously, the rushing upside is there, and I think he's probably a top 3, top 4 play on this slate. I think that Jalen Hurts is projecting very similarly, and he's 500 cheaper, which makes him a little bit of a better play, in my opinion. And I think Trey Lance, you're still going to get 8 to 12 rushing attempts out of Trey Lance in a plus matchup against the Bears. And the biggest thing for me with Trey Lance is, and why I'm personally comfortable running him is I think that the 49ers staff is going to allow him to operate with more of a risk behind the offense rather than how they played with Jimmy G. And it was a very safe underneath offense. I think they will allow Trey Lance to stretch the field and use his arm and use his accuracy. We saw it in the preseason. And then obviously his legs and his threat as a rusher. Um, I definitely like Trey Lance, and I think Trey Lance would be my favorite cash game quarterback, but we'll see what happens. Still haven't finalized the lineup, and Jalen Hurts is squarely in play, but it's really those three guys for cash games specifically. Just the rushing upside is what you're looking for in cash. If you're not
Yeah,
playing a rushing quarterback, you're just setting yourself up to be behind the competition.
I agree, and I prefer Mahomes and Herbert both to Lamar in
Bro,
tournaments, but
there's a
in cash,
fucking bug on my screen, dude.
damn,
It just got murked.
damn, bro,
My
you
bad.
why you ain't want to put them in a cup and like free them?
Nah, fuck that bug.
Damn, R.I.P. Man, gone but not forgotten. All right, anyways, um, I think Trey Lance is a player that on the podcast we were talking about being, chalk, but as the week has gone on, I think that people have really, really come off Trey Lance. I think he's squarely in play for tournaments. If anybody caught the video on this YouTube channel I did earlier in the week talking about my favorite tournament plays, I think Trey Lance to Deebo Samuel with a Darnell Mooney bring back is just top tier chef's kiss. Got to get that in there for the upside. In terms of other quarterbacks, what's really piquing your interest for tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, if we, just are looking at some of these quarterbacks and their projected ownership, I think Justin Herbert definitely stands out at 7,600. This Raiders and Chargers game is the second highest total game on the slate, just right behind the Chiefs and Arizona game. And it looks like everybody in this game is going to come under owned. Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, Devontae Adams, some of the highest ceiling players on the entire slate might come in at a 5 or 10% ownership in week one. And I think that game is a total smash on all fronts. Josh McDaniels has consistently been among the league leaders in terms of his offensive pass rate, with New England and his quick stunt as a head coach. And we could see Derek Carr just spread the ball out a ton to Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, etc. And Justin Herbert, obviously great. Mike Williams, great. Keenan Allen, great. You got Gerald Everett as a cheap piece if you want to go that route. So I definitely love that. I definitely love Justin Herbert at his lower ownership. And I think Joe Burrow also stands out to me too. And, we know where the ball is going in the Bengals offense. It's going to Jamar Chase. It's going to T. Higgins, and the double stack and bring back kind of just makes itself if you're looking at projected ownership and projected ceiling.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think that Herbert and Mahomes are going to be my primary focuses on this slate. I want to sprinkle in some Burrow, but I have two sort of off the wall names I wanted to toss out there and get your thought on. All right. The first one, everybody's well, not everybody, but a lot of people are trying to debate this Trey Lance thing. You know, he's a rushing quarterback. He's cheap. There's another rushing quarterback that's pretty cheap, even cheaper, in fact, and he's going to be clocking in around 1% owned. His name is Justin Fields in the same game. All right. I think that this could be a classic trap spot for the 49ers. Sky high hype around Trey Lance. We have a West Coast team traveling east early in the morning. Justin Fields' new coaching staff, post Adam Gase era, separating. We know that he has ceiling as a rusher, and we know that the targets are going to be extremely consolidated. You can bank on 25+% target share for Darnell Mooney, another player who's going to be very, very low owned. I think that, it makes sense to take a shot at Justin Fields, to Darnell Mooney, bring back of your choice in Debo or Brandon Ayuk. This is the type of shit that wins, massive field tournaments. Nobody is going to play this stack, and I'm certainly interested.
Yeah, you could definitely run that stack in the $5 milli, million plus entries. So you're going to need the absolute nuts. And so maybe you shouldn't run this stack in there, but you could definitely run it in a little bit larger of a field for sure if you're just trying to get unique. And, if we're just looking at this game right here, I mean, his best game of the season came against San Francisco at home, 103 rushing yards, hit the bonus. And that's really how Justin Fields is hitting his ceiling, is through his rushing upside. So I would only be single stacking with Darnell Mooney. I would not include Cole Kmet in there. And then if we take what I said about, the 49ers maybe letting Trey Lance, open up the offense and take more shots downfield, I think that bodes well for Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel, two big play wide receivers, in my opinion, that they both have great yak ability and can break long touchdowns. I mean, Debo did it in that game against Chicago last year. So I definitely don't hate it. Obviously, the only concern is the team total and the environment and, whether or not this coaching staff is actually an upgrade or not. I mean, it should be in theory, but we'll have to wait and see. And nobody's going to play Justin Fields. So I think that something that I want to embrace this year is being more contrarian, right? If you're playing how the field is playing, you're never going to separate from the field, right?
Exactly.
You're never going to get ahead of the field if you continue to operate and play at the same, wavelength that everybody else is. So I kind of just want to get away from what everybody else is doing this year. And, Justin Fields is definitely a player that fits that criteria.
He does. And the second absolute long shot quarterback that I want to toss up there, same exact price as Justin Fields. If you look one name up, Trevor Lawrence. I've been talking all week about how I think that the Jags are very live as an underdog to win this game. Washington is going to be without Chase Young in this spot. And I think that this is a great opportunity for Jacksonville to come out and make a statement. They're past the Urban Meyer debacle. They've got Doug Peterson. They could lean more pass heavy in this spot. James Robinson is supposed to be back, but I'm not buying any of this nonsense with him. I don't think he's going to be the first running back in NFL history to, shed the Achilles injury at this pace. I think that they are going to be almost forced to be pass heavy. I think if ETN is out there, that helps Trevor Lawrence. ETN is going to be an explosive pass catcher that adds a dynamic to an offense that it has lacked recently. Trevor Lawrence in his second year, they come out, statement win, 2 touchdowns to Christian Kirk in this game, cheap stack. Nobody's going to play Trevor in this spot. And it's great leverage against a defense that is going to be twice as owned as any other defense on the slate with the Washington Commanders, which I think is a huge mistake.
Yeah, I definitely like Trevor this week. Definitely love Christian Kirk. I don't know who else I would double with Trevor Lawrence. I don't necessarily love playing ETN, just because I think if ETN is hitting his ceiling, I think some of it is coming from rushing and rushing upside. Maybe I'm just thinking too much about fantasy Twitter, kind of tearing down Travis Etienne's receiving ability and, largely contributing that production to the Clemson scheme. And it might not translate as well in the NFL, but we'll definitely have to wait and see. Obviously, I'm betting against James Robinson betting against players coming off of Achilles tears is 100% like winning bet over the last 10, 20 years, or in the history of the NFL, I should say. So not sure who I would double with Trevor. But I definitely do love Christian Kirk. And, if I had to pick one, I would prefer Fields over Trevor.
Mm.
And we got a little update there.
Oh,
George Kittle not expected to play week 1. So that consolidates the targets even further in the San Francisco passing game to Debo and Ayuk. So if Trey Lance isn't going to be owned, I definitely love Trey Lance in tournaments. And I think that Debo and Ayuk are very good tournament plays as well. And we'll touch on them when we talk about wide receiver.
Yeah. Anything else at quarterback you want to get to here?
No, I think the last guy that, is definitely in my player pool personally is Jameis Winston at 5,300. Yep. It's a plus matchup going up against this Falcons defense that was like bottom 7 in passing DVOA last year. Obviously, they have A.J. Terrell, their lockdown corner, but besides that, they have nobody on this entire defense. I think the Saints' moves in the offseason just truly indicate that they want to become a pass-first team. And they have Chris Olave, Michael Thomas is healthy, and nobody is going to play the Saints. It's in a dome. We obviously know Jameis Winston is capable of bringing multiple pass catchers with him to the top in his spike weeks. We didn't see it a ton last year. He didn't have one game over 300 passing yards, but they also did kind of limit Jameis Winston last season. As you could see, 2 games with only 30-plus passing attempts. I think we see that change, and I love the Saints double. It's one of the best affordable double stacks on the entire slate, with Jameis Winston being 5,300, Michael Thomas is 5,700, and Chris Olave is 4,500. If you're looking for a cheap double with an extreme ceiling, in my opinion, that's the double to play right there.
With an easily, bring backable Kyle Pitts at 5,700, projecting for under 10% ownership. You get a separator at the tight end position, which is few and far between. I like that quite a bit. We are still waiting on official confirmation on Michael Thomas. I'm expecting that he plays, but there were times last year I was expecting Michael Thomas would play, and he ended up being a surprise scratch repetitively. So I don't know. I mean, I think that that's actually the last piece of potentially impactful news we get. If there's a scenario where Michael Thomas gets ruled out prior to lock tomorrow, I think Chris Olave becomes extremely chalky, and then we would have to reevaluate this situation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Chris Olave would become chalk at all, just because a lot of people just aren't adjusting to late news. If Michael Thomas was ruled out on Wednesday, yeah, Chris Olave would probably be among the highest owned wide receivers on the slate at 4,500. But if this news gets dropped at 11:30 when the inactives come out and Michael Thomas is officially scratched, Chris Olave will not be chalk at all, especially with some of the other options that are cheaper than him going to be chalk, which we'll touch on at wide receiver. But
yes, let's focus first on the running back position. I think that in the mid-range, we have 2 very clear-cut options that are going to be very highly owned, Saquon Barkley and Najee Harris. However, there are some rising ownership numbers on guys like Aaron Jones, on Joe Mixon, on DeAndre Swift. But in terms of cash games, I don't really think we're considering those guys. I think our pool is pretty consolidated to Saquon and then a higher price running back.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 cash game running backs this week, in my opinion, and I think you're probably choosing 2 of them for your lineup, and that's Saquon, Najee, and Christian McCaffrey. I mean, they're just all relatively underpriced. They're just all relatively underpriced, considering their potential workloads and their target upside. Saquon Barkley, I think, has a floor of like 18 touches and a floor of like 4 to 5 targets in this spot. Obviously, the Giants team environment is the concern around Saquon Barkley, but positive game script, negative game script, it doesn't matter. Saquon Barkley is going to be out there. He is going to be one of the only 3 down workhorse running backs that play in week 1, as well as Najee Harris. So I think at 6,400, Najee Harris is definitely underpriced. And then I think the clear-cut best play at the running back position is Christian McCaffrey at 65 at 8,500. This is just a prime buy low opportunity on a player that's going to be 10.5K if he stays healthy in the next month.
Yeah.
So buying low on Christian McCaffrey in the spot makes a ton of sense in the world. He's projecting as, the best play on the slate out of any position. The opportunity, the target upside, the touchdown upside is just extremely high with Christian McCaffrey. He's the best fantasy player on the planet when he's healthy.
Yeah, I don't think that Christian McCaffrey in cash is even a question. He is a lock as far as I'm concerned. The question, though, is can you stomach Christian McCaffrey in tournaments pushing 30% ownership when there are so many high ceiling running back plays on this slate?
He said 10.5K, LOL never. Yeah, you must have not been here for 2019 Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I mean, he was 10.5 at points in that year.
Yeah.
But so McCaffrey, say between 25 and 30% ownership in tournaments, can you stomach that? When Austin Eckler's cheaper, when Aaron Jones is cheaper, when you get into the mid-range, high ceiling running backs.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely have exposure to CMC in your tournaments. I think that largely depends on what type of tournaments you're playing. Are you playing the large field MME tournaments where you need to hit the nuts like the $5 Millie Maker, even the $100 Millie Maker this week? In a tournament like that, I probably wouldn't eat the chalk there, and I would try to get different and hope that CMC busts. But if you're playing in like a small field, single entry tournament, I think Christian McCaffrey is fine. I think he's fine there. So I think it just largely depends on what style of tournament you're playing, if you want to fade CMC. And if there's one position where you can eat the chalk at, it's definitely running back. Like the best plays at running back are the best plays for a reason, right? CMC is a very, very good play, and ownership would be the only reason to fade him. But yeah, you could definitely get away from him and go to an Austin Eckler or a Derrick Henry right there, and all of those guys should come with significantly lower ownership than Christian McCaffrey.
I agree with that. Can I also say, I think this is a good time to bring this up. You talked about it on the podcast, but I want to reiterate. I think that we should really be taking ownership projections with a massive grain of salt, like a boulder of salt, low key. Like a grain is too small, because I do not believe for one moment that Christian McCaffrey is going to 2x Jonathan Taylor's ownership this week. I don't believe that at all. I mean, we've seen it all year, especially with an increased level of casual players on DraftKings in week 1, which we know is always the case. I think there will be less people, or I think the ratio of people looking at projections on DraftKings is going to be heavily shifted towards the middle, which it rarely will be late in the year. So I could see people just preferring Jonathan Taylor as the pay up option. It looks like a better matchup on paper. People aren't worried about the injury risk, et cetera, with JT. So I think that his ownership is going to be a little bit closer to 20% than 10%, like I'm seeing on some sites now.
Yeah, I think people will definitely play Jonathan Taylor. He was the best fantasy running back last year. He's only 600 more than Christian McCaffrey. It's a plus matchup against the Houston Texans, a team that he just obliterated last year. He went for 28.3 points in his second game against Houston, and he went for 31.8 points in his first game against Houston last year. And the Colts should be in a positive game script for sure against the Texans. So I think that people will definitely play JT at a higher rate than what the projections are initially suggesting.
Yes. All right. So, McCaffrey, Barkley, Najee, that about sums it up as far as cash games go. But tournaments, I'm interested in getting different at running back this week, which rarely is the case. But there are some options I think that are flying way under the radar. But what is standing out to you at running back for tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're looking at the top of the pool, the guy that what's stand out to me if you're looking at projections and ceiling and ownership is Dalvin Cook for sure at 7,900. Dalvin Cook is projecting for 2-3% ownership on sites that I'm looking at, and he has one of the highest ceilings out of any running back on this slate. And obviously people have been burned by Dalvin Cook, especially with injuries. And people are also high on Justin Jefferson, and rightfully so. But this is the fourth highest total game on the slate. This is a player that we know has an extremely high ceiling. If he smashes, right, 38.2 points, that's winning you a tournament at 8K, and he's 7,900 in this spot. Obviously, you're hoping for 100 yards and multiple touchdowns, but as a direct leverage play to Justin Jefferson and a just contrarian play all around at the running back position, and has one of the highest ceilings on the entire slate. I don't mind taking a shot on Dalvin Cook in this game.
Alexander Madison is the play per BOP. He's 6.2K for a reason. Have you considered Madison with a projection of about 3 touches?
Yeah, I don't think Alexander Madison has crossed my mind yet, but I'll definitely take it into consideration since Bob pointed it out.
Shout out Bob, always an innovator. Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, 2 guys that are going to go under owned compared to the upside that they bring, especially on full PPR. Draftkings, very interested in finding ways to get Austin Eckler into some builds. It's just like we talked about, such a great game environment. Second highest total on the slate. Chargers at home, they have the second highest implied team total on the slate. They're favorites. Eckler can get there in any game script, whether it's ahead or behind catching passes. So Eckler, to me, phenomenal play.
Yeah. The best tournament play at the running back position, though, we already talked about it on the pod, even before the projections came out. And a lot has changed in this last couple days since the pod. I hate to say it. I hate it.
Say it.
This man right here,
bang,
is the best tournament play on DraftKings in week 1.
It makes all the sense in the world.
He is the best tournament play on DraftKings in week 1. If you are watching this, he's currently projected for a top 5 ceiling on the entire slate out of every running back. But he is the only running back in the top 10 in terms of ceiling to be projected for under 10% ownership. He is a direct leverage play on Hollywood Brown, who's going to be one of the highest owned players on the entire slate. He has opportunity upside. He has target upside. The game environment is phenomenal. He's a home running back. The touchdown upside is extremely high. I mean, come on.
You don't get plays like this every slate. And when you do, you got to jam them in. You absolutely have to. I can't wait to play James Conner this week. Not something I ever thought that I would.
And he survived cancer.
And he survived cancer. A fucking boy, man. James Conner for the absolute win this year. Could not agree with you more. I'm absolutely playing James Conner in one of my 2 high dollar single entry buy-ins.
Yeah, and I mean he could definitely bust. He could definitely have this 2.6 game. But from a process and projection standpoint, I mean, James Conner just makes way too much sense to at least not play him in a few tournament lineups just from a theory perspective. Like James Conner is projected for less than 10%, while Hollywood Brown is projected to be 20+% on the slate. What if the touchdowns go to James Conner?
What if?
What if Hollywood doesn't catch a couple long touchdowns? What if James Conner gets 8 catches?
What if Hollywood Brown and AJ Green aren't built to handle the underneath stuff because that's not their bag, and Rondale Moore isn't there for the low ADOT stuff, and Zach Ertz has been dealing with an injury all week? What if they need James Conner to catch 8 dump offs? What about that? I think that's well within the range. And just for anybody who's wondering, Chase Edmonds last year, who is no longer with the team, obviously in Miami, missed 5 games. In those 5 games, James Conner averaged 15.8 attempts per game, 5 targets per game, 98.4 yards per game. So he's right there on that 100-yard precipice, and he scored 7 touchdowns in those 5 games without Chase Edmonds. No-brainer play, top GPP running back of the week.
Yep, exactly. And if anybody is watching, if you have any questions, we answer every single question that will come across our comment section. So if you have any, we will be glad to answer it. But yeah, so James Conner, number 1 for sure. Do you have any interest in these cheap running backs in tournaments? I know you mentioned Travis Etienne a little bit. Antonio Gibson is actually projecting okay right now as a cheap running back. He should see opportunity at 5,800, and then you have, Chase Edmonds, who you also just mentioned. You have your Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the same game with James Conner. So do any of these guys interest you? Do you think they can win you, a large field tournament this week?
I think so. I will highlight the 3 guys in this range that I like, and I'm going to be mixing in, especially to my larger field stuff. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, for all the reasons that we like James Conner, I think that you could make the same case for Clyde. He is, in that same game, massive total. Chiefs have the highest total, and all we've heard all offseason is that Clyde is the one that they want to succeed out of this backfield. So I think he gets a shot 5,400 in week 1 to make it happen and to establish himself as that RB1 in the backfield. So just from a game environment and team perspective and low ownership perspective, leverage off of Juju, Kelsey, and Mahomes stuff, I think Clyde is super interesting. And then the other 2 guys, Travis Etienne, like we already mentioned, I think that his role is going to expand, especially earlier in the year, as James Robinson is almost certainly not going to be as ready as the team is making him out to be. He has pass catching upside. We could be getting an arbitraged, DeAndre Swift at a $1,200 discount in a spot where I think the Jags can put up more points than people are expecting. So ETN I like. And then lastly, I'm a big fan of Elijah Mitchell this week. He's kind of under the radar. He's not one of the guys that we would typically target on DraftKings because, he's not going to be a guy drowning in targets. But at 5,400, I think that there are scenarios where the Bears are not good. They're terrible in the middle of their defensive line. And I think that, maybe Trey Lance isn't having the best game as a passer. No George Kittle there. They just need to get some pressure off. We know that this is a spot where the 49ers could feed Eli Mitchell 25 touches. And if he gets 2 touchdowns and 100 yards at 5,400 and, damn near, 5% or less ownership, I think Mitchell is in play as well.
And I mean, we saw last year against Chicago, 18 attempts, 137 yards and a touchdown. And that was with no pass catching work.
We've also seen rare games where Mitchell does get pass catching work. I know that he has a 5-target game in his game log last year, a 6-target game in his game log last year. If things do get competitive, maybe there is potential for Eli Mitchell. And Bop says in the chat that weather is supposed to be bad, high winds for the Chicago game, which if anything just makes Mitchell an even better play.
Yeah, 5,400, definitely for sure. And yeah, if we bring up the weather report right here, Bop is not lying. Some parts of the Chicago area are going to see an absolute deluge, whatever that means. Whether or not that's on the stadium during the game is too early to know. You have to wait until Sunday morning to really know for sure. Winds will be around 15 miles an hour with sustained gusts of 25 miles an hour.
Might be a reason to pop off that Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney nonsense I was talking about earlier, but we will see in the morning. I have a question for you because there's one other running back in this range that I find interesting. I find this whole range really interesting just from a perspective that none of these guys are going to get played. But what about your boy, Ramandre Stevenson at 5,500? Nobody's going to play him. Somebody told Matthew Berry earlier this week that he's going to be the Alvin Kamara of this Patriots offense. He should get an elevated pass catching role with no Ty Montgomery. And there's been speculation that he could just leapfrog Damien Harris and be the RB1 on this team. It's not the best game environment, but he does have theoretical 2 touchdown upside with some pass catching mixed in. Can we play Ramandre Stevenson this week in tournaments?
I don't think so. I think
No.
Elijah Mitchell is a superior play to Stevenson. I think Antonio Gibson is a superior play. I think Travis Etienne is a superior play. We just don't necessarily know if he's actually going to have the pass game role. I mean, if there's just one coach that, are we going to believe what Bill Belichick says when he gives no fucks about fantasy, right?
Yeah,
Like he's just
probably
going to
not.
play whoever's playing the best football. And Damien Harris obviously is a very good running back in my opinion, at least at rushing the football, and he's going to get run. So you're playing a split backfield running back in Stevenson on the assumption that he may have the passing game role, when in reality, I think the report about Damien Harris, is going to stay on third downs on his drive, and Ramandre Stevenson is going to stay on third downs on his drive. I think that's more accurate rather than Damien Harris playing 2 downs and then Stevenson coming in and whatnot. I think they'll just ultimately rotate drives, and if one back gets hot, they'll probably ride the hot hand.
Okay. Interesting. You are very in touch usually with what's going on in the New England offense. So I will definitely take that into consideration. Other running backs that you're interested in? We haven't talked about Damien Pierce, who's gained a lot of steam, obviously has been, essentially the biggest winner of the NFL training camp season. He has emerged as Houston's number 1 running back. He's cheap, 4,800. Levy Smith said this week that he has earned the right to be the starting running back of this team. I think Rex Burkhead mixes in a little bit, but 4,800, the price is right for a player who should have a pretty good workload in this spot.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind Damien Pierce. I mean, early in the week with the projections, he was definitely a far superior play. Now he's projected to be like a top 5 owned running back, top 6. At that, I'm comfortable fading him as, a 6-point dog in this game, and we don't necessarily know whether or not he is going to have that pass game role. I think we could probably assume that we'll go to Rex Burkhead, but Damien Pierce did show enough in the preseason to obviously be listed as the RB1 and should see opportunity. But if he gets you, 15 attempts for 80 yards and a catch, like
It's
that's
just
not,
not getting it done.
it's just not getting it done at 4,800, even though, he's under 5K. And I think we'll see a lot of those stat lines from him this year. Like, 15, 16 carries, 75 yards, maybe a catch or 2, 10 points.
Mm-hmm.
Not getting it done. So I'd rather just take a shot on players with higher ceilings, in my opinion, like Chase Edmonds due to his pass catching ability, due to Travis Etienne, Elijah Mitchell, et cetera, et cetera. So, pay up a little bit, get in this mid range, and So I think. Do you have any long shot running backs? Any low owned running backs that you're going to take a chance on? Maybe a Ronald Jones or something.
Nothing that crazy. I think Mitchell's my boldest call. He's going to clock in under 5%. I feel good about that.
What about Pacheco?
Pacheco, min price 4K. What if he comes out like Kareem Hunt did in his rookie year with the first game and just goes absolutely fucking nuclear?
Is it in the range?
Probably not, but maybe.
All right, then you can't play him.
I'm not touching Pacheco this week.
I guess the last player that I would mention would be Mike Davis. I don't know how you feel about Mike Davis. Projections don't necessarily love him. He's 4,400. He is going to get work tomorrow. It's a good matchup. J.K. Dobbins, is he out or it's not confirmed yet?
It's not confirmed, but he's like, I would say he's out. Yeah, I'm expecting him out.
Yeah, he's not going to play. They signed Kenyon Drake. I don't know if we expect him to be a factor that much. I don't know. Mike Davis, he could be the cheap running back option that you need. I mean, if he scores 2 touchdowns, which is definitely in the range against the Jets, could be the guy.
I think that Mike Davis is the type of player at this point in his career that could score 2 touchdowns and have under 20 points on DraftKings.
Yeah, that's fair. That is absolutely fair.
I will not be playing Mr. Michael Davis tomorrow.
Fair enough.
If that makes me a fish, then I've got gills. Fuck
it. All right. Moving on to the wide receiver position.
Interesting wide receiver pool this week. Very interesting.
I think a lot of these wide receivers are underpriced.
Yes.
I would say pretty much every wide receiver from 5K up is underpriced, or is mispriced, I should say, by a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 or so. Top guy, in my opinion, this week, Justin Jefferson, 7,800. Justin Jefferson is going to be a 9,500 wide receiver in a month.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it all off season long. We're expecting Justin Jefferson to absolutely flourish in this Cooper Kupp role of the new Vikings offense. Justin Jefferson is trying to lead the league in receptions and yardage. He's trying to compile stats and go for 2,000 yards. That's the type of fucking dog that we want in our DFS lineups. A guy who's grinding for success as hard as we are. Justin Jefferson ain't stepping out on the one, for the Vikings to win a game the way that Nick Chubb did, in that traumatic experience years ago. Justin Jefferson's getting that ball in the end zone. All right. 7,800.
Facts.
I'm jamming Justin Jefferson. And the fact that his ownership he's not a sneaky play, but his ownership projections have dropped steadily all week long. He's now down around 15%. 15% Justin Jefferson is something I'm absolutely willing to eat in terms of tournaments. And I think he's squarely in play in cash, even though I'm starting to hear some sharp people say that they may not be able to fit Justin Jefferson. I don't know what you're talking about. You got to fit the rest of the lineup around Justin Jefferson as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think I'm on board with you. I kind of just want to jam in the best plays on the slate, and I think Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey are the best plays, and I'll make it work around those two guys. But nonetheless, still a ton of talent at the top of the pool. We touched on Deebo Samuel a little bit earlier. He's 7,400. Legit, nobody's going to play him. But I think if you are playing tournaments correctly, and there are a ton of articles out there on how you should be playing like large field tournaments. Shout out to ETR. They dropped one, how to win the Millie Maker or whatever. You got to play low-owned wide receivers and get different at wide receiver. That is the position that has a lot of variance, and a lot of it is talent-based. And Davante Adams, in my opinion, might be the best tournament play at wide receiver on the slate. Maybe not anymore, so I just lied. Maybe not, because I just looked and his ownership projection is steadily increasing, which is unfortunate. He was projected to be around 5 to 7% last time I looked, and now it's above 10, creeping up towards that 12-14% range, which is truly unfortunate, but maybe people were coming around to it. Projection wise, he has one of the highest ceilings on the slate, and if he were to come in under 10% owned, I mean, Davante Adams is an absolute smash, but maybe we have to hop off that now.
No JC Jackson. I think he's still in play, but there's so much ceiling at the wide receiver position. I don't know how high we have to pay up. I guess there's not much of a difference between paying up for J Jeff and paying up for Adams. It's $300. It is what it is, but
yeah. I mean, you have Jamar Chase, 7,100, projected to be lower owned than Davante Adams now. Jamar Chase, I think he's a phenomenal tournament play, and we mentioned with Burrow, the stack builds itself with Joe Burrow, who is projected to have one of the highest ceilings on the slate, combined with one of the lowest ownerships at the quarterback position. So if you want to run Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, that's a beautiful double stack to run tomorrow at relatively low ownership for the upside, and I think that is totally fine. Other than that, I'm just not used to seeing Tyreek Hill at 6,800. I know
it's a little off-putting, isn't it?
We didn't talk about him at all on the podcast, and I don't think anybody has talked about Tyreek Hill this week.
Tyreek Hill's interesting, and I could see this team making a pointed effort to give him a monster play in week 1.
Right.
I think
And
that
it's
they
a
want
good
to make this
matchup.
signing look good. It is a good lineup. The Patriots reportedly are lacking quite a bit of speed on the outside, and that could be
Well,
a fucking problem.
so I mean, the Patriots played the Chiefs quite a bit, obviously, and their solution was really to double cover Tyreek Hill. And they have Jonathan Jones, who is one of the fastest cornerbacks in football.
Now,
So
isn't Jonathan Jones, wasn't his primary role to be the slot corner last year where he was locked down,
yeah,
and now they're moving him outside? Do I have that right?
yeah, yeah. No, you do.
Is that a
Um,
problem, do you think?
but Tyreek Hill plays on the outside, right? I
Right.
think they will have Jonathan Jones lined up on Tyreek Hill, and they will double Tyreek Hill. But the cornerback depth for New England isn't great, in my opinion. And Tyreek Hill still has a ton of big play upside. And at 6,800, I mean, you're getting one of the best wide receivers in the NFL at no ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, the projections aren't going to love it. He's projected under 5% owned. He's projected like the 15th highest ceiling on the slate on
That's
every
just
wide
bad.
receiver. That's disrespectful, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
But obviously the concern is Tua and the offense and whether or not they're going to run the ball a ton. But you got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle. I think you got to throw it a little bit.
Yeah. I will not be, heading into lock tomorrow without any Tyreek Hill. There will be some sprinkled in, guaranteed. And as well as the man right below him, Mike Williams, who's my favorite wide receiver play. Been talking about it all off season long. Mike Williams is primed to emerge as the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in this offense. He's still priced as the wide receiver 2. I think he has a higher ceiling than Keenan Allen at this point in their respective careers. He's going to be flying under the radar this week, attached to Justin Herbert. That stack absolutely builds itself. You've got your Waller and Adams bring back options.
See, I don't know if I would
can't wait to see
play. I don't know if I would play Keenan and Mike Will together.
I would not. I think
Just
that you
because,
can go cheap. You can go cheap, whether you play Keenan or Mike Will. My lean is Mike Will. I think Keenan's a good play too. But I think that your doubles with Herbert are very easy because you can include a cheap option, whether that's Josh Palmer at 3,800 at wide receiver or Gerald Everett at 3,800 at tight end. Either way, you're saving salary in an expensive stack with Justin Herbert at 7,200 and getting upside. Neither of those guys need to have monster games, but if either of them catch a touchdown, I think that they could go there if you're hitting a nuclear, Mike Will game.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think that something I want to focus on is just thinking through the ways of how each of my individual players hits their ceiling, right? And the way that I think Mike Williams is hitting his ceiling is through multiple touchdowns. And the way that I think Keenan Allen is hitting his ceiling at this point in his career is through target volume. A ton of catches, ton of targets, maybe a touchdown. So obviously, if the Chargers just go absolutely nuclear and drop like 45, 50 points, then maybe they both get there. But if they're dropping 28, 30 points, and Mike Williams is scoring 2 touchdowns and seeing, a good target share, I think that's hurting Keenan Allen specifically and vice versa. If Keenan Allen is eating up catches, I think that's hurting Mike Williams upside a little bit. But nonetheless, it's still a great double if you want to play it. I don't know if I would. It's expensive. There's similar players that have higher upsides, in my opinion, at the same range. But Mike Williams, nonetheless, is projecting to be, around 5-6%, but he has one of the highest ceilings on the slate. And those are the players you want to play in tournaments. You want to play the players that are going to be low owned, but still have relatively high ceilings compared to the rest of the wide receivers if you're looking at projections. And, he's what, 1, 2, 3, 4. He's 7th right now in terms of wide receivers on the slate in ceiling projection.
Yeah. And to your point, I just think that you're building more ceiling into your lineup with Jamar Chase or Tyreek Hill over Keenan in a Justin Herbert, Mike Williams stack specifically, just in terms of if Mike Williams is hitting his absolute top percentile outcome, I think that you have better luck if you're going to be paying up to one of Chase or Hill or whoever in that range.
Yeah.
we kind of just jumped full throttle into our tournament plays and kind of skipped over cash. What are you thinking for cash at wide receiver? I mean, I feel like it's
Nobody plays cash anymore. What's cash games? Everybody just wants to bink the millie and become rich, and that's my goal. If I bink the millie, I'm out. See ya.
See ya. It'll be lit. I mean, that might happen tomorrow though. Hey,
I play
hang on.
cash.
Hey, Detective Dirty.
I play cash too. Okay.
Yeah.
I dropped the cash. I dropped the cash video today. I got to drop that a little bit earlier in the week, so that's my bad. But for cash games at wide receiver, I think Justin Jefferson, who we already talked about, and I think the second best play for cash games and in general is Hollywood Brown this week. We talked about the Cardinals' injuries earlier. Rondale Moore confirmed out. Zach Ertz maybe unlikely to play in this game. There's no holes in Hollywood Brown this week. Legit zero. Poke a hole in Hollywood Brown as a play. He's projecting well. Target upside is there. He obviously has familiarity with Kyler Murray. They played together at Oklahoma. Has high upside as a player, right? And as a receiver. Game environment, spectacular. Team total, good. And a very potential shootout back and forth matchup.
Yeah.
What's the hole with Hollywood Brown? He's a lock in cash. If you're not playing Hollywood Brown in cash, you're sacrificing money. It's that simple.
I could not agree more. I would fade Michael Pittman before I faded Marquise Brown this week. And that's a hot take, but I stand by it. I think that the game environment's better. I think that even the projected target share is close, especially with Rondale out, maybe even better. Yeah. I love Hollywood Brown this week at 6,200. Michael Pittman is going to be he may drop 2 touchdowns. Yeah, that is fair. That's actually fair. But
Michael Pittman is going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, yeah, go ahead, Michael Pittman.
I think Michael Pittman is a very good play this week. He's just underpriced for his talent and his target share or his projected target share, in my opinion. He's going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the entire slate. I think you can definitely get away in tournaments. Like there's those games where JT takes over. I mean, we saw it a ton in those same matchups against Houston, 17 points and 5.8 points, in a plus matchup. Like this is easily a game where the Colts can dominate and pass attempts could be suppressed. Obviously, we've heard that they do want to pass more, and Michael Pittman is really the only pass catcher worth a damn, in my opinion, on that offense. So he's definitely going to be a favorite for Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan's also good enough to spread the ball around and get other players involved in the offense, whereas I don't think Carson Wentz is. Yeah. So Michael Pittman, obviously a good play. I think he's an easy tournament fade, especially when you consider some of the players that are around him, such as Adam Thielen, Darnell Mooney, Michael Thomas. If Michael Thomas plays, easy fade in tournaments. But in cash, I'm locking in Michael Pittman. I'm locking in Pittman, Hollywood Brown. Detective Dirty asks, flex wide receiver for cash, dubs in cash. So, yeah, I mean, if we want to hop into that cheap wide receiver discussion, I got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on it too. Bop also in the chat said that he had a vision of a Jahan Dotson 74-yard touchdown. Dotson and Dubs, right? 2 rookie wide receivers. Dotson is 3,400, Dubs 3K, the min price. Are you interested in these guys? I have a hot take, but I'll wait until you go.
I mean, is it a hot take to say that I'm not playing either of these guys in cash?
It might be because they are projecting as 2 of the highest owned wide receivers on the slate. These guys are going to be top 10 wide receivers on the slate. And I think that they are, in their own ways, god awful plays. Like I think that the ownership is going to take them out of consideration for tournaments. It's so easy for me to fade a high owned, cheap wide receiver. Why would you play that? And then second of all, I mean, Dotson as chalk in attached to Carson Wentz in his first game as a rookie wide receiver. What the hell are we doing here? It makes no fucking sense. Dubs, I get he's min-priced. Lazard's out. We have a lot of faith in Aaron Rodgers. I think that Dubs is a step ahead of Dotson in terms of a play, but I wouldn't touch either of them. I wouldn't touch him in cash.
I don't agree with that.
No?
I think Dotson is a better play than Dubs, but I definitely wholeheartedly agree that I'm not playing these dudes in cash. Like these people and these projections, like you're getting fancy play syndrome at this point. And Josh just put in the chat, Pickens best rookie week 1. I totally agree.
Wholeheartedly. And he's
totally
leverage off Najee. It's come on.
Like I'm not playing Jahan Dotson or Dubs in cash. I think it's an unnecessary risk to take in week 1. Especially Dobbs. Like this man, I don't even think is going to be in 3 wide receiver sets. And Bob says, is Dotson really chalk? Says who? Just projections have Dotson projected to be one of the highest owned wide receivers. And a lot of people playing DFS are using projections. And Dotson, he's just going to be on the field a ton, right? And he's a cheap wide receiver, and people want to fit as many studs as they can in their lineup. So they will make these type of plays. And don't get me wrong, I have in the past before, and I just don't think it's necessarily a risk that I'm willing to take in week 1, especially Dotson on this, Carson Wentz led offense. Maybe it burns us. I don't know. I think we're on the right side of fading, especially Dubs. Like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
I'm not playing Romeo Dubs on a run first team as the 5th or 6th option in the offense. Like, if you play Dubs in cash, send me a head-to-head. Please.
Oh, dude, we haven't been able to use this banner in a hot minute.
Send me a head-to-head. If you're playing Dubs in cash, please send the head-to-head over.
Please do. We need them. We need that.
I'll play up to 20. I'll play up to $20.
Anybody who sends it, I'm on that same wavelength. And
yeah, but nonetheless, fading those guys in. If we're talking about tournaments at this cheap range, then if these 2 guys are going to be chalk, and Michael Pittman's going to be chalk,
I like where your head's at.
Who the fuck is the best tournament play then? It's this guy.
I see him. I see his name on the screen.
If you want to talk about the ultimate leverage play, if these projections actually shake out on how they're supposed to be,
He's
Paris Campbell,
well too.
He's the easy pivot.
Yeah.
Easy pivot.
Yeah. I think Campbell's a phenomenal play this week. It goes into everything you were saying about Matt Ryan being able to spread the ball out a little more. Maybe they lean a little bit more pass heavy. I think there are outcomes where Houston's a much more competitive team this year under a second-year Davis Mills. They should be a little bit more comfortable. If they push Indianapolis at all into any sort of up pace, pass-centric attack, Paris Campbell's going to fucking eat at 3,300. I would rather play him straight up over Dotson or Dubs.
Yeah, I mean, Paris Campbell at 2% owned, or Jahan Dotson at what? Let's see what his ownership is projected for. Jahan Dotson at 15+%, and Romeo Dubs at 20+%, or Paris Campbell at 2%. I mean, come on. Let's think through these tournaments. These are the plays that you have to make. Just easy leverage. But even then, like, if everybody's going this specific build, there's just leverage in not going this build. There's just leverage in going in the mid-range for a ton of your positions, and you can make a beautiful mid-range team with a ton of upside and a ton of correlation that can get the job done.
So I think that we didn't mention T. Higgins. I think he's going to be a pretty popular option in cash as well. So I think that the build that includes one of Dotson or Dubs, I don't think people are playing both in cash. I think it's going to be something along the lines of one of those guys to save at or to save the salary so you can pay up for Kelsey. Right. I think that that's the Dots and Dubs thing, because Kelsey's projecting to have a ton of ownership. I think he'll be played at a decent clip in cash. So, maybe you're playing 3,400 Dotson with a 6K receiver, or you're playing or I'm sorry, with and then or Kelsey and Dotson versus like Irv Smith and a 6K receiver is what I should say.
Yeah, so something like this, right? Like where you're going just
Yep.
off the projections or something like this.
Right.
This would get you on that build.
And I could
Maybe
see a lot of people finding their way off Hollywood, maybe down to like Juju Smith-Schuster, or
yeah.
maybe they save a little bit at defense and play Damien Pierce as a flex, something like that. But I think that a lot of people will have a roster construction like this in their cash game builds.
Totally agree. And you brought up Juju. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate at 5,200. But I think this range in general has a lot of very good plays. Obviously, in my opinion, Juju is the standout play just because of the game environment and the quarterback that he's attached to. But you have Rashad Bateman at 5,300, kind of a breakout candidate in my opinion, going into his second year. And the targets are condensed in Baltimore, obviously, to him and Mark Andrews, in my opinion. So I think he's worth a speculative play. Ayuk, George Kittle isn't going to play. The targets are going to be condensed as fuck in San Francisco, but obviously the weather and the winds that Bob mentioned earlier in the stream could be a potential concern. But then you have, Christian Kirk at 5,100. Christian Kirk in the preseason was a target monster. And if we just take a look at the people that he's competing with for targets on this Jags team, includes Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, and Travis Etienne, in my opinion, at least. And obviously James Robinson is probably going to see some work on the ground. But Christian Kirk has the opportunity to be, a 23, 25 plus % target share player, and he's 5,100 in a plus matchup with a new scheme, new head coach, and second year Trevor Lawrence. And he got a bag, so they're going to use him.
Yeah, I think people still have priors about the contract that he got and thinking he was overpaid, but like, what does that matter when it comes down to multiple reports, numerous reports all offseason that Trevor's locked onto this guy? Like you said, Evan Ingram, dude's a career bust, can't catch a football. Zay Jones, maybe he's like mediocre if we're lucky. Marvin Jones, I like, but he's 32 years old. I think that Christian Kirk was valued by the team in a way that tells us that they want him to be a featured part of this offense. And that is what all reports we've heard have echoed. I love Christian Kirk this week at 5,100, and he is going to go. I mean, he's not going to be like 5% or anything, but I don't think he's going to be played at a high enough clip that we have to worry about fading based on ownership.
Yeah, just your classic DraftKings play. He's going to be a PPR monster this year, in my opinion. And those are the guys that you want to play on DraftKings. I think another guy that projections kind of like is Adam Thielen here at 5,400. Obviously, it's the game environment. It's the rhetoric around the Vikings are going to run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets. They're going to pass the ball more than they have in the past. And Adam Thielen definitely has touchdown upside. When he's healthy, he can score touchdowns. And he's 5,400. Projections, like I said, don't hate him. He's projecting pretty solidly right now, kind of around 10% ownership. So I think he's definitely in play. But for me, if I had to rank these guys, I mean, Juju is definitely my 1, and Christian Kirk 2, and Bateman would be my 3rd favorite outside of or in this range.
Yep, I agree. There's one more name that I have to throw out there before we move on. At least one more name, but talked about him on my video, which you can find on this channel, but I am all over Marquez Valdes-Scantling this week at 4,700. I think that he is a phenomenal leverage play off of both Juju and Travis Kelce. He has the type of role, right, where we want to attack. He can be a deep down the field threat. That's what they brought him in here for. One of the first signings of free agency, looking to fill that Tyreek Hill gap. And by all reports, Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster have, won the, 1 and 2 respective jobs for the wide receiver position in KC. I think that Sky Moore, is going to be a slow burn. I think it's going to take him a little while to get a significant role in the offense. Both of us have pretty strong conviction that Mecole Hardman is just the type of thing that's never going to happen. So MVS to me is clearly solidified as a top 3 option in this passing game. He's leverage off of 2 really highly owned players. His, ownership in itself is going to be under 5%. And, he's a salary saver attached to the best game environment on the slate and attached to the best quarterback in the league. Maybe it's a little bit gross. We have priors on Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You've told me at least 50 times this offseason that he sucks at football. Very possible. That's most likely true, but it's not going to stop me from playing him just in a leverage sense at a good price tag with a high ceiling this week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I mean, he does suck at football, and talent does matter at the wide receiver position, and just don't know how much opportunity he is going to have. But all it takes with MVS is 1 or 2 plays, and he's paying off his 4,700 price tag. I think personally, I'd rather take just chances on Chris Olave at 4,500. If I'm going in this, range of, let's say, 45 to 5K, I don't know how you feel about Devontae Parker. Nobody has talked about Devontae Parker.
Revenge game.
Probably too gross. Probably wouldn't go there, but
yeah, I think I'm all good on that.
How do you feel about Sammy Watkins? That's your boy.
I'm not playing any Packers outside of Aaron Jones this week.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Anybody else?
I don't know.
We gotta touch on. I think we've pretty much hit everybody that's like really interesting. Kadarius Toney is coming down off of what we thought was going to be a massive chalk week. I still think he's going to get played at a relatively decent clip. I would be fully off of Toney unless his ownership projection just tanks by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I mean, he's still projected to be a little bit above 10%. And at that ownership projection, I think he's still fine at 4,100. Obviously, there were some reports that he's like the wide receiver 4 on the team because Sterling Shepard is going to play. And Sterling Shepard is 4,900, and he's a target earner himself. So Kadarius Toney at 4,100, I think it's fine. But in cash, if I'm playing Saquon Barkley, I'm not playing Kadarius Toney. I don't want 2 giants in cash. I'm firmly on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. At the same price point, I think I would just prefer George Pickens, low key. Ownership wise, potential talent. I don't want to get into the talent thing. We do have a chat wide receiver to talk about. Elijah Moore. Are you interested in Moore at 5,100?
I think he's solid. I think that the Jets are definitely going to be down in this game, and they're going to have to throw the ball. And, Joe Flacco did kind of lock in on Elijah Moore in these games last year where Zach Wilson missed. Pretty sure he had these big games with Joe Flacco. If I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, Elijah Moore, I think he's fine. He put DJ Moore. That's who I was going to bring up is DJ Moore. He's kind of projecting to be, mildly owned. I don't necessarily love it. I think that the offense is just going to funnel through Christian McCaffrey. I think that Baker is definitely an upgrade, and that should help DJ Moore, but it's not like he's a tenfold upgrade, in my opinion, and the target share should be there, but at 6K, I don't love the game environment. I don't necessarily think he's better than T. Higgins or Hollywood Brown for a couple hundred more. So just for those reasons and the players he's around, I'm not playing DJ Moore tomorrow.
Yeah, I like the guys that are priced below him by like 500 or 600, and I like the guys that are priced above him by like 500 or 600.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas? Question mark.
Yeah, if he's healthy, I'll play him in the Saints doubles. We already talked about him a little bit.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of Thomas, even if he's active. I wonder if he's going to just jump in and be a 90+% snap player right away, or if they ease him back, especially if this is a non-competitive game, which it very well could be. Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's interesting. I think he's viable in tournaments. This if the Lions are down, right? There's a scenario where he eats gets a bunch of targets. Everybody's going to be playing Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown stuff. St. Brown makes a lot of sense, and he's good leverage off of DeAndre Swift as well.
Yeah. Ricky said Kittle unlikely to play. Yep. But some potential bad weather, and there is some inherent risk around running Trey Lance and those 49ers players, but I still love it. I like Debo as a tournament option. So does Ben,
Yep.
and Ayuk is still cheap for his upside as a player. Other than that, not many other wide receivers I want to talk about. At tight end, Kelsey obviously is going to be the chalk. A lot of people are going to play him in cash. For me, I'm just never playing the highest or the second highest priced tight end in cash games, even though he is 6,600. And we talked about this way back when in August when the prices first dropped, that he was going to be cash just because 6,600 is disrespectful. Don't get me wrong. Like, it is disrespectful for Travis Kelce. He was 8,300 last year in week 1. Why are you pricing him that much lower when the situation got better and the game environment is spectacular?
Yeah,
It
makes
makes
absolutely no sense.
It makes no sense. But just from a construction standpoint, I'd rather just pay down and hope that my cheap tight end gets me 10 points rather than Travis Kelce, getting me 18 or 20 at 6,600. The way that he really murders you is if he goes for like 30 plus. And I usually just take my chances, and it's usually correct.
Yeah, I mean,
opportunity
you might
cost
get
is just so
marked
low.
twice a year on that.
Yeah, the opportunity cost is just so low, in my opinion, that I'm just going to pay down at tight end no matter what. I don't give a fuck unless Travis Kelce's like 6K and it works. Nah.
Now, obviously, no disagreements from me there. We're on the same page. Always punt at tight end in cash, but in tournaments, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and I think that you could make the same case of Kyle Pitts and Darren Waller, maybe to a slightly less extent, do have ceilings that the vast majority of these other tight ends can't reach. While pricing wise, we do have a lot of, running backs that are, say, sub 7K that have the same ceilings as the top price guys. You can look at some of the wide receivers in the 6K range and tell yourself a story that they could be the highest, scoring wide receiver on the slate. So does it make sense if you're playing for absolute ceiling in a large field tournament to find the cash to get up to these guys in Andrews, Kelce, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, they could definitely separate from the field, but, 24% owned Travis Kelce, I mean, I think you're better off just fading him. And
Andrews, right, is going to come in half the ownership.
Yeah, Andrews is going to come in half, and he's $200 more with similar upside. So Andrews would definitely be the tournament option there. And the tight end pool is just horrible. So yeah, I mean, you could definitely pay up in tournaments and just capitalize on these elite guys for sure. Kyle Pitts, 5,700, Darren Waller, 5,400. The three highest owned tight ends, in my opinion, are going to be Andrews, Kelce, Darren Waller.
Yeah. Out of the three, I'm probably most likely to play Waller just because I'm so interested in Herbert and he's a natural bring back. Maybe Devontae Adams shades some coverage away there. Darren Waller got the bag. What was it, today or yesterday? He just got the bag. So
now he's fine magically.
Yeah, all healed from his injuries. Money will do that to you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the range we will be in though for cash.
I wonder who the backup tight end is to George Kittle. Take a gander.
It's not still Dwelly, is it?
Tyler Kroft. They re-signed him on Wednesday. Any interest in Tyler Kroft? No? What about Charlie Werner?
Maybe some mild interest. He does appear to have caught 5 balls last year. News to me.
Or Ross Dwelly. Is Ross Dwelly on the team? We did play Ross Dwelly like one week.
Yeah, we sure did. Probably fucking not though.
No Ross Dwelly action.
No, right. Man. I don't think that there are really any tight ends that I would consider viable below the Irv Smith range. I don't think.
Probably not. Yeah, Irv Smith is definitely the standout cheap tight end in my opinion. Just with his ceiling as a player, and it's a good game environment, good offense, potentially touchdown upside with Irv Smith. So I definitely don't mind him. I think Mo Alley Cox is a great tournament play. I think
Good
Mo Alley
leverage.
Cox is one of the best leverage plays. Leverage against JT, who should be kind of owned, leverage against Michael Pittman, who's going to be the highest owned player, and he's a cheap option and a touchdown upside option at a position where you're really just banking for touchdowns if you're playing a cheap tight end. So you want the guys that have the best possible chance of scoring touchdowns if you're paying down. And I think Mo Alley Cox and Irv Smith are definitely two of the best, in my opinion. Cole Kmet is definitely up there, 3,700. He has target upside. You last season you could have banked on 5 targets minimum, but
Yeah.
you weren't getting much out of them.
No,
but this will do. Like, give me 9 points.
Well, see, Kmet was also dealing with Jimmy Graham, who is no longer on the team. I'm like 95% sure. If he is, chat, please correct me. But I with Kmet gone, or with Graham gone, I think Kmet has a better chance in the red zone. I mean, if you look at his raw numbers, 60 for 612 is really good. He just had 0 touchdowns. If he mixes in, a natural tight end, 5 to 6 touchdowns this season, he's having a phenomenal year. And 3,700, I think, is a really strong play for him. Let's answer some questions before we finish out tight end. Ertz is on a snap count. Most likely, I would imagine he's still questionable. We don't know for 100% certainty if he's going to play. I think some people could get driven to Trey McBride if Ertz is ruled out, but I think that's pretty goddamn thin. Elijah Mitchell or Rashad Penny? This is an interesting one. What do you think?
I mean, Mitchell easily.
Really? I mean, I feel pretty good about Penny this week. We haven't talked about him, obviously, because he's not on the main slate. But, Kenneth Walker's not going to play in this game. Rashad Penny's bankable for 20 touches. It's just, they could be down. I don't know what he's going to do as a pass catcher. It's rough.
Yeah, I think game script could get out of hand. Obviously, the ultimate revenge game with Russ going into Seattle. I think that the Seahawks offensive environment is bad. I think they have the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. I think that Rashad Penny most likely will cede snaps in the passing game to Travis Homer and DJ Dallas.
Yeah.
And Elijah Mitchell might as well, but I'd put my faith in Elijah Mitchell in that spot. But
I mean, the game environment is much more likely to favor Mitchell than it is to favor Penny by a wide margin.
Yeah. But other than that, tight ends, I mean, this is the worst position to talk about, bro. I legitimately hate talking about tight ends because all of these dudes suck. We think that the tight end pool is deep every single year, and then it's the top 5 guys every single fucking year. Like,
yeah,
just correlate your tight end spot. Use it as part of your stack with Gerald Everett and Justin Herbert. Cheap option. He needs touchdowns to get there anyway. So if Justin Herbert's throwing 4, hope Gerald Everett gets 1 or 2 of them. Boom. Okay. I mean, he said Hunter Henry. Ertz on a snap count, Hunter Henry. You didn't even answer the question. I'd play Hunter Henry in that.
It was a question. That was my bad. I thought that was like a note. I would play Hunter Henry as well. For sure.
Over Ertz. And
Bob says Hurst. I mean, low key, that's kind of like what you're just talking about. You might as well just correlate. If you're playing Burrow, maybe you don't double stack it with both guys. You play Chase. I'm not mad at throwing Hayden Hurst at 3,300, and they were going to sign OJ Howard and didn't, right? So
yeah. Obviously, it's a little disgusting, but yeah, you could definitely play Hayden Hurst. But yeah, tight ends I just use as correlation pieces. I use it as part of my stack. I use it as part of a bring back. So if I play Mark Andrews, I'm playing Lamar.
Right.
If I play Kelsey, I'm playing Mahomes. If I play Pitts, I'm using it as a bring back in my Saints stack. If I play Waller, I'm using it as a bring back in my Chargers stack. That's how personally I approach the tight end position. Don't know if that's correct or not. But
no, I totally agree.
that's
And
what I do.
I think you keep your paws off of the TJ Hawkinson, Mike Gesicki, Dallas Goddard range for sure.
I mean, Goddard, people are on Goddard this week.
They are.
People are heavy on Goddard this week at 4,500. I just think that, you know,
Are you really getting more out of Goddard than you're getting at Irv for a 1,100 discount? That's my problem with it.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not too high on Goddard, but some sites do like him nonetheless.
Fair enough. Let's finish off here with DST. Bears DST and GPP's question mark.
I mean, bro, defense. Don't overthink defense. You play teams that aren't chalk.
Yeah.
In tournaments. And cash, you're probably playing Washington or Miami. 2,600. That's just how the build works out, is you have that amount of salary left over for your cash game lineups. And that's usually how it works out every week. Defense and cash and the chalk is strictly dependent on the other players that are chalk around it. And this week it just so happens to be the Commanders fit perfectly.
Yeah.
At home against Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But there's literally no correlation to like salary and fantasy points and
projection and defense. There's no correlation whatsoever.
You just play the low-owned defense that maybe is at home in a good spot. Maybe they'll see a ton of dropbacks, and that gives you a better chance of potentially getting lucky on a pick six or a fumble six. But everything is so unpredictable. You can't predict kickoff returns for touchdowns. You can't predict punt returns for touchdowns. You can't predict pick sixes and fumble sixes or sack fumbles for touchdowns. It's just unpredictable. Like you could probably put yourself in a better situation by maybe paying up a little bit to one of these defenses that are at home and can generate pressure on the quarterback. But at the end of the day, just don't play the chalk defense in tournaments. That's it.
Yeah,
that's literally it.
Yeah, and this week the chalk defense is by far and away looking like it's going to be the Commanders. That is an easy fade for me. Fine playing the Steelers under there. They should face a lot of pass attempts. They have a good pass rush. That makes a lot of sense to me at 2,400. Lions, I'm fine with at the stone cold min 2K. What's the worst that could happen? They suck like every other defense. Fuck it. It's fine. It's leverage against Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you do have those leverage defenses like the Lions, but then again, they suck on defense.
Absolutely,
they probably
terrible.
won't, win you a tournament unless Jalen Hurts throws a pick six or two, which it's definitely in the range. You can't predict it, but yeah, I mean, they just suck. So there's a reason that they're 2K. Yeah. So I just wouldn't play cheap defenses in tournaments. I like to kind of sit in that like 26 to like 31 range, and just play the defense that is low owned. Falcons versus pick six Jameis. Yeah, I mean, Jameis could easily come out and throw 4 interceptions. Falcons D though is a little priced up. They're 2,800.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not playing a team that might get blown out by 30 points as defense. That's not happening. Sorry.
Probably a higher probability of that happening than them getting a pick six.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe that's a stretch. But if anybody else has any questions, get them in now. We've been going for an hour and 23 minutes. We covered pretty much every player on the slate.
Oh, feels so good to be back, man. I'm so excited.
Are you banking a tournament?
Absolutely, I'm banking a tournament. I'll tell you which one. I'm banking the $200 single entry double spy. I almost had a fucking panic attack because it filled and I thought I missed it and I was hyped for playing it for a couple of weeks. Shout out to Draftkings. They dropped a second one. I was in there right away. So there are still some spots open. If anyone wants to try and, bank this thing, come in second place behind me, that's still 10K for you. So, new AI dating for all tastes and ages. Looks like there's some liquid getting sprayed around there. Maybe that's whoa. Damn, sorry guys, you're gone.
Yeah, we gotta block the spam accounts. One low-owned player to break the slate, Ben. Who's breaking the DraftKings Week 1 slate? There will be somebody who will do it. It's inevitable. It is inevitable.
I don't know. What do you think? What's?
I think that is James Conner. I think that it is James Conner.
I could see that. I'm on board with James Conner. I'm on board with Mike Williams.
James Conner, 30-plus point game coming, or Paris Campbell.
I think that's pretty fair. I like both of those.
Paris Campbell at 2% owned as a direct leverage off of Michael Pittman, the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. Scores 2 touchdowns and goes for 100 yards.
Yeah. And yeah,
That's
I guess
prediction.
The other answer would be James Conner, which we talked at length about. I mean, he's just supreme leverage on Marquise Brown, and reception upside, multi-touchdown upside, workload upside, everything is there.
Yeah. And James Conner, he's going to be under 10%, but he's not going to be like 1%. Paris Campbell's like 2%. So,
yeah. Is that it? Have we done everything that we needed to do? Any more questions, folks, before we get on out of here? Got to get a rest in, up early in the morning, coffee, go for a morning walk, little pre-slate meditation, close your eyes, maybe let some breeze touch your face and just feel the plays come to you.
Yeah, you gotta wake up early, get going, cup of water, essential, ice water. You need the cold water. Go outside, get some sun, soak in the rays, come back to your computer. It's like 10 a.m. Build your lineups, watch football for 10 hours straight. Boom. Chalk player you guys are fading. Dubs, Jahan Dotson.
Yep.
And he said, I think I'm fading Pittman and GPPs. I am as well. So
yep.
Those would be my 3.
I agree with all 3 of those. I would also throw God damn it, I just had it on the tip of my tongue.
And in tournaments for me, I'm fading Najee too.
Oh yeah, Najee's for sure.
Would you trade Chris Godwin for Jerry Jeudy?
No.
I think it's close.
But I mean, no. Because if Chris Godwin he's questionable, right, for week 1. If you get the following 16 weeks out of Chris Godwin, if he's good week 2 on, then I think he's a better player than Jeudy in fantasy.
How many games should you play from? Yeah, what's your player pool like?
Games? Like NFL games am I playing from? Is that the question?
No, I mean like for like tournaments. Like are you just clearing out games? Like you're not playing anybody from any game?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's different for every lineup though. I think that sometimes you want to correlate one-offs, but I mean, like for example, I'm not stacking up the Patriots Dolphins game, but I'll play Tyreek Hill as a one-off. I'm not gonna probably be stacking the Giants Titans game, but I'll play Derrick Henry as a one-off, shit like that.
And how many lineups are you gonna have?
Tomorrow, I'm going to play probably more than I usually would because I think that there's so many really high upside plays that are going under the radar. I want to get exposure. I would say my average on a week-to-week basis is 10. I'll probably play 20 tomorrow.
Fair enough. Yeah, I usually play 10 to 15, but I might tone it down tomorrow. I kind of want to try and condense the player pool and hopefully I hit on the players that I like. But
it's always tough, especially week 1. I'm like, yeah, man, I'll just play a couple. I'll get my Herbert stack, my Mahomes stack. And I'm like, well, shit, I need a Herbert stack with Waller.
I need a fucking Jameis Winston stack and a Joe Burrow stack. And
need Joe Burrow. Yep.
That's what I think every fucking week.
I can't not play a Lamar Jackson stack. Holy shit, I forgot about Kyler. I got to get a Kyler stack in. All of a sudden, I've got fucking 50 lineups running and I'm about to be broke.
Said Alec Pierce breaks the slate at 3,900, so he thinks it's the other Colts wide receiver. I think it's Paris Campbell at 3,300. You're getting a $600 discount on Paris Campbell. All right. We got 40 seconds left until an hour and a half. We're ending it there. So if anybody has any last second questions, you got 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Joey's got a hard out.
Hopefully we bank.
Yep.
I win the Millie Maker.
Maybe a solo stream for a couple weeks.
Maybe for the rest of the season. We'll see.
Tough scene.
AJ Dillon. That's it. AJ Dillon.
That's a good statement.
I'm not playing AJ Dillon.
He's going to get more targets than Dubs. All right, that's my last word. All right, we'll catch you guys next time.